Hi everyone, hope you guys are all doing well and having a great weekend here. I just wanted to do a quick video that was inspired by a video that Silverfish had put out a couple of days ago. And he just talked about the proverbial debt monkey arriving in the United States and just how there's an increasing debt load amongst Americans. And I just thought that I would point out just a little bit of the situation in regards to debt here in Canada. And I found a couple of articles, both in the Financial Post. And the first one here just talks about the record debt that Canadians are accruing and the target for a new record in 2013. So I'm not going to talk too much in depth about each article. I'll just kind of point out a couple of things and then get to my main point after them. But this one just points out that Canadians are on pace for a record high of almost $29,000 by the end of 2014, and again, $29,000 in debt, just as it applies to personal debt such as the lines of credit, credit card debt, and also car loans. And this article here, it does a good job of pointing out the nexus between lower interest rates and also lower delinquencies. So it realizes that even though the debt is accruing quite quickly, it's easier to carry that debt forward because the interest rates on the debt are so low. But it also recognizes the danger in increasing interest rates in the future. And this second article here is also an interesting article, just talks about consumer debt and also too, just like the other personal debt, like the article was pointing out, Canadians on record again for $1.4 trillion in consumer debt. So, as far as the debt monkey is concerned here in Canada, Canadians as well are getting more and more into debt. And this article, I just found one part really interesting where they were talking about the danger of Canadians getting more and more into debt. And this author, they quoted somebody as just saying that as the interest rates rise in the future, around 2015, 2016, there should be a transition period that will allow consumers to adjust their spending habits. So I just found that interesting just because that's not really the case where people notice that their debt is getting higher and higher and then will just automatically change their habits. And also, too, as the debts are reaching more and more records each year, and as more and more debt accrues, if interest rates spike up quite quickly or even just over time become quite higher, it's going to be hard too. People might not be in a position just to change their spending habits. It might be too late and it will be hard for them to carry that debt forward. So I'll put the links to these two articles down in the description below. But I just wanted to point out, and these two articles do recognize the fact that interest rates have a large part to play in the new records that Canadians are getting themselves into in regards to debt. But again, too, it is important to point out, just because if you read the comments in these two articles, and also to just other videos on YouTube's and just the public as a whole, a lot of people think that it comes down to the fact that we have what they call a need it now generation, or people trying to keep up with the Joneses. And in my opinion, I think that that's placing the blame in the wrong areas. Again, too, as I just mentioned, interest rates have a really large part to play in all of this debt accruing. And I'd just like to point out a really good book called Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. And his book is basically just it is based on one key premise, and basically that's the broken window fallacy, which argues that any good economist has to pay attention to the seen and also to the unseen. So the seen in this situation here is that Canadians are getting more and more into debt, which would infer the conclusion that people just have no responsibility when it comes to debt. Again, too, they need it everything right now. Again, too, it's the iPod generation. It's mostly the young people not being responsible with debt. However, it doesn't pay attention to the unseen qualities in our current environment. With interest rates being so low, people have a really low time horizon, which means just because of their natural inclinations as humans. We all have infinite desires. And again, if you're allowed to satisfy some of those desires in the short term, because you can just go into debt quite easily. Again, it's not too hard just to put things onto a credit card or get a line of credit at the bank. If you're allowed to purchase those things to satisfy your short-term needs, but you can carry that debt going forward quite easily with low interest rates, then it's going to send the wrong signals to individuals, and individuals are going to get there easier and easier to try to satisfy those short-term needs. Really, what interest rates should be doing is it should be creating some responsibility amongst individuals not to get into debt. So without those high interest rates there to try to curb people's natural inclinations to satisfy their short-term desires. Again, too, it's really hard to blame that as just somebody trying to keep up with the Joneses, and also a need it now type of a generation. So again, too, what I'll do is maybe I'll try to find if there's a link to Henry Hazlitt's book. I believe the Mises Institute has put it out in a PDF. But if not, it might be something that you want to Google or try to find on Amazon.com. I own the book, Economics in One Lesson. I found it really helpful just with my overall view of economics. And also, too, just to tie this into silver, again, too, this is probably preaching to the choir, but it's really important to stay out of debt. And as my brother and I get out of school and start to enter the real world in a couple of months here, we're trying to focus on staying out of debt and realizing that if we want real financial freedom, not only do we have to acquire silver and make sure that we're putting a little bit of money every month into precious metals, we're really going to have to stay out of debt as well, which should help our overall silver stacking goals at the same time. So I just thought that I would point this out to go along with Silverfish's video about the debt monkey in the United States. Canadians aren't doing any better here, as you've seen from the two articles. We're hitting record highs in personal debt and also consumer debt, which carries a really high interest rate and isn't positive types of debt if you want to categorize different types of debt as positive and negative. But also, too, it's very important, in my opinion, to place the blame in the right areas, which isn't to give a pass to individuals. They should be responsible and recognizing that their current debt levels aren't sustainable. But also, too, if you don't notice and don't point out the fact that the government manipulation of interest rates at all-time lows, if you don't recognize that that plays a really big unseen consequence, then I think that we'll never get to the point where we have financial responsibility. And sadly, in the future, I think that as those interest rates spike, we're going to start to see some really tough times, not only for Canadians, but also for Americans as well, unfortunately. So we're going to keep going forward, try to stay debt-free, and also try to accumulate as much silver at the same time as we can. In the next couple of days, what I'll do is just do a little bit of a recap on our silver stacking goals for 2014 as we try to reach 100 ounces on the year. I'm just going to talk a little bit about, do some videos talking about some different ways that we're trying to increase our stack faster, and also just try to do a little bit of an update on what we're trying to buy next and what we have bought in the month of February. So thank you very much for watching. This video is getting a little bit long, so I appreciate everyone that stayed to the end. But that's it for now, guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you next video. Bye for now.